Okay, I need to apologize profusely to everyone. Welcome to the beginning of the semester 2022. I obviously have a little bit of a learning curve that I've been going through with Zoom, with the emails, with COVID and everything. But thank you so very much for joining us. I am super excited about this presentation. I'll tell you a little bit about our speakers in just a moment, but I do want to tell you that next week, hopefully things will be a little smoother. We will have another seminar series at 4 o'clock, and that will be with Dwayne Biggs. It is tentatively on resilient conservation. Dwayne is the Francis B. McAllister Endowed Chair in Community, Culture and Environment here at NAU. And I will, towards the end, after we have the presentation and the Q&A, I will let you know about the link for the class, more intimate discussion. You are all invited to that. And I will send you put that in the chat towards the end. But now, on to our presentation that we have with Twyla Cassador. I'm sorry, I'm just going to say your first names because I don't know how to pronounce either of your last names, and I really apologize for that. But we have Twyla and Seth. They are with the Apache tribe, and they're going to be talking about food and which one of us doesn't eat food. So I know that we will all be able to relate to this, only they are going to offer some amazing experiences and work that they have been doing to bring in the holistic concept of how to eat off the land and based on their traditional diets. So without any further ado, I am going to turn it over to you guys. So take it away, Seth and Twyla.
Hi, everybody. My name is Seth Pilsk, and I work for the San Carlos Apache Tribe Forestry Program.
My name is Twyla Cassador. I work for the Western Apache Diet Project.
So for the first part of this presentation, you're going to be hearing a lot from me. Sorry. And my job is just to give you a whole lot of data. But luckily, the second part of the presentation, you're going to be mainly hearing from Twyla, who will be able to make sense of it all. So if you'll just kind of bear with us. But just as part of an introduction, Ellie doesn't really have to apologize for anything. We made it really difficult for her. We had lots of last minute changes to our plans. Here at San Carlos, COVID is really exploding, which really is terrible in the community and definitely affected our travel plans. And so the presentation we're going to show you today is not exactly what we had in mind. We were going to do obviously live and in person, and had a lot of things to show you, but this is still a good way to give you a lot of information. And just for some background, I've worked for the tribe for over 30 years now, and Twyla and I have been working on a project that goes back over 30 years of learning and collecting information from traditional Apache elders about the traditional Apache relationship with the natural world. And I'll let Twyla introduce herself.
Okay, again, my name is Twyla Cassador. I've lived here in San Carlos. I'm part of the San Carlos Apache tribe. I am an enrolled member here, and I've been here all my life.
And so the focus of our work has been collecting, learning this information from elders, and then trying to do something meaningful with it. And so that's what we're going to present to you today. And just before we start, to let you know, these elders, yeah, I'll do the same, sorry. These elders, for the most part, were born between around 1900 and 1930. And they learned from their grandparents, most of whom grew up before the reservation. And so the information that we have been learning dates from that time and has been passed on for generations and generations, for centuries, in a real unbroken continuum until right now at this moment, which is why we're doing this work. And we don't do it alone, we do it with a lot of others. And so we'll get going on this presentation.
Okay, so this is just a summary part of our creation story. And we're gonna go with, we're gonna talk about Nayenes-Ghani. Nayenes-Ghani is the first Apache man. And as Nayenes-Ghani was growing up, well, first off, Nayenes-Ghani is the son of the sun. And as Nayenes-Ghani was growing into adulthood, his father showed him two worlds. And on the first world, he showed him a brown world that was full of cattle, metal, manufactured things, cows, horses, pigs. And then on this world, he showed him a beautiful, colorful world that had flowers, agave, deer, clean water, spring water, acorn, nuts, and berries, and many beautiful food and living animals. And his father had asked him, which of these two worlds does he want to live on? And so with that, Nayenes-Ghani, of course, chose the beautiful world. His father showed him the two worlds again, and he showed him a bow and arrow, and he showed him a rifle on this side. And he asked him which of these two that he would like to use, what would he like to have while he lives in this world. And of course, he chose the bow and arrow. And basically, this is a story that was shared with our people here. And it was always told for us is that this world does not belong to us. We belong to this world, and we are going to help take care of this world. And that's just something to share when you're looking at insights of why people feel the way they feel about some things. So thank you.
When we started working with elders, we're talking about birds, animals, plants, and things like that, trying to find the names of things and about it. And what the elders were really trying to teach us was they were not trying to teach us traditional ecological knowledge, and they were not trying to teach us the names of things. They were trying to teach us how to live. That's their perspective. And one of the elders put it really simply. He said this, that if the people ate their traditional food and lived that traditional way of life, there would be none of these new sicknesses that we're dealing with today. And this man knew what he was talking about. He was just like one of these guys on the right. He was trained by his uncles and his father as a runner. And so he was able to run up to 75 miles a day for continuous days. And even to the age of 99, he was very, very fit. And so we took that really seriously and decided to really, for part of our work, to really focus on the food. And it's a really important thing to focus on. Today, for a lot of people who study Indian country, San Carlos and White Mountain are two of the, unfortunately, top 5 or so reservations in terms of health and social problems. There are currently real epidemics of physical health diseases, which we'll go into, many of which, if not most of which, are directly diet related. But there's also a real epidemic of substance abuse. Alcohol and meth are now completely part of the fabric of the community. And alcohol has been becoming that way for a long time, but especially since World War II, when it has been exploding. And they're just part of every aspect of life now. There's also an epidemic of suicide, attempted suicide, and cutting. Those are, I think they're averaging almost 1 suicide a month now, which is a lot for a community of this size of less than 15,000 people. And there's also an epidemic of sexual violence, which kind of goes right with all of these other problems. And at the same time, there's an ecological crisis. We have ecosystems on the verge and sometimes beyond the verge of failure. And that was before climate change. And now it's really, really accelerating. And the elders really talk about this a lot. They are able to track the history of these health and social changes and tie them to what was going on in the world. And what they always said is that the land, the health of the land and the health of the people are completely attached. When one is healthy, the other is healthy. When one is unhealthy, the other is unhealthy. That's a very, very strong correlation. The other thing is that probably the Apache people and the land have more than likely changed more in the past 150 years than in the previous 10,000. And it definitely was not always like this. This is a very recent thing. When you think of the history of the world and of human beings on this world, these changes have really only been taking off in the past 150 years. And so these pictures kind of represent what we have been studying, which is that Apache relationship with the natural world. Apache people knew every living thing, every plant, every animal, every cloud, and every insect. They knew its name, they knew its prayer, they knew its song, and they knew how to form a symbiotic relationship with every being on the world. And Apache people saw themselves as people, just like the bighorn sheep are people, or the fireflies are people. They see us all as people. We're all exactly on the same level. We all have feelings, and we all want to get along with each other to help each other survive. You want to talk about the history?
Go ahead.
Okay. And this way of life came to an abrupt change with the founding of the reservation. And this happened around in the 1860s, and the reservation was founded in 1870. But the picture on the left is a ration line. So Apaches were all rounded up at San Carlos, and their lives completely and drastically changed overnight. Before this picture, people were living on the land, and they got up every day with a sense of purpose and meaning that always included a direct and strong interaction with the natural world and all the elements in it. They were completely self-sufficient and very, very healthy. In fact, even more so than their other native groups around them. Really amazingly happy and healthy people. And we know this from countless stories from elders, and this changed. So before the reservation, there was almost no such thing as sexual violence. It was a very rare thing, as was suicide, as was substance abuse. In fact, there are strict prohibitions against all of those things. As soon as the reservation was founded, almost overnight, began those epidemics of substance abuse. People were starting to learn how to make homebrew and getting into hallucinogenic plants that they were always told not even to look at or touch. All of a sudden, people were trying to get as high as they could on things. And it was the first wave of suicide, where mainly men started committing suicide, which was almost unheard of before the reservation. And sexual violence was almost unknown, whereas right after the reservation, there would be roving bands of men or boys on foot or horseback, and if they saw a woman alone, they would violate her. This was all unheard of and shocking behavior, and yet those are the same epidemics that are so prevalent today, and not just at San Carlos, but in indigenous communities all over the world that have the same kind of history of colonization. And one of the quick things about that before we start going into the food, this is just all background, is that we were talking to a psychologist, a shrink who was working at the school some time ago, when we were telling her about this, and she said she wasn't surprised at all, because the quickest way, she said, the quickest way for a human being to feel power is to attempt suicide, rape somebody, or get high. It's a kind of like a desperate attempt to have some control in your life and control over somebody else. So this is kind of all a backdrop and is kind of the setting of where modern food came in.
Okay, so you look at,
Yeah.
Okay, so you look at today's diet, and this is pretty common among most reservations in the South, the Southwest. And you go to any supermarket, most of the supermarkets on reservations are actually low in fiber, high in saturated fat. Of course, they're high in cholesterol, high in sodium, high in processed food. Okay. And that relates to many of the diabetes that we have on the reservation. Our numbers are pretty high. 17 to 24% of adults are formally diagnosed with diabetes, way over 50% are overweight or obese, including children. And these are all diet related.
Yeah, it's one of the really sad things. Even kids 1 year old, they look like really good, chubby, healthy kids, but a lot of times their mothers are just overfeeding them with formula and all kinds of other things just to keep them quiet. And so as of 2019, before COVID, these were the leading causes of death. And almost every year for the past 20 years, it's been the same group of things. Sometimes suicide is higher, sometimes motor vehicle accidents are higher, but these are the big ones that are always the top leading causes of death. And of course, provide the underlying conditions which make the death rate from COVID so much higher than the average also. So since we started working specifically on food, we've been able to collect a database. And at the same time we've been doing that, we have been collecting all this information about plants. There's over 700 plants, Apache plants. There's over 150 birds and about as many insects. And so we've been collecting all these information in different databases and we'll talk about how we use them a little later. But specifically with plants, we've created this really intensive information about the traditional Apache. And we've done hundreds of interviews, either formal or informal interviews with Apache elders. And so we now have this detailed information about close to 300 different food species. And from this information, we were able to compile these sample pre-reservation menus. And what we did is we picked 8 days per month and we imagined a pre-reservation menu for that day so that we have a total of these 96 menus. And our idea was to do a nutritional analysis of it. And the reason for that is when we told people that we were working on the traditional diet, most people in the Western white medical community were not excited about it at all because they figured, well, we already know what a good diet is. But we also knew that that good diet was not helping Apache people at all. And so we decided to really find out what is the difference between the real Apache diet and what the doctors were recommending. And so we did that. We worked with a nutritionist and we worked on putting these menus together, and where we didn't have information about nutritional values, we found a close relative and we were able to crunch a whole lot of numbers and come up with some findings about the diet.
So you're looking at most of the Apache people for our diet, you're looking at wild plant food made up to 40–60% of the diet. Agricultural food were about 25 to 50%. Wild meat were consumed 20–40% of the diet. Most important food by volume in the traditional diet were the roasted agave hearts, Emery Oak Acorn, wild seed, primarily sunflower family, mustards and grasses, corn and meat.
And just as a note, the agricultural foods is really only corn and squash, but there was over 12 varieties of corn and a few varieties of squash. So it's a really varied diet.
So there are way over 200 documented Apache edible wild plant species comprising of greens, seeds, nuts, fruits, roots, tubers, fungi, stalks, flowers, and minerals. Our traditional agriculture is centered on several varieties of corn, a few varieties of squash, rarely beans. Beans was introduced. We ate about 30 species of mammal, mostly rodents by volume, 9 main species of birds, supplemented by several species of songbirds. So the diet was extremely nutritious. So you can see it in this part. It's like high in fiber, 2 times of the USDA guidelines, high in protein, low in saturated fat, healthy in polyunsaturated fats, low in cholesterol, low in sodium, very high in B, C, and K vitamins, calcium, zinc, and iron. Sweet, naturally sweet, without processed sugars, rich in a wide variety of whole and wild foods and supplements. And it's very filling with a very little bit amount.
And one of the things that we found that really struck the nutritionist is that this super high fiber and super high protein diet, this is like it's one of the preferred diets for like an Olympic level runner. And Apaches were really a running culture. And also the part that's low in sodium, they did use salt for cooking, but not a lot. And actually salt was used more for prayer and ceremony than it was for eating. Yeah. And another thing with this diet, when we talk to elders, we just got this picture of really happy people. When people were living that old way of life, there were stories and stories and stories about how people were so happy and had really, really effective ways of dealing with trauma and grief, and knew how to get rid of it and remain happy and not worry too much about the past or the future. And one of the stories an elder told us that he was a little boy and he came home early from school. He was living with his grandparents who were in their 80s, and he interrupted them while they were having sex in bed. And he said it was just really common then for people to live long lives and have good teeth and good sex lives until late in life. And that's a pretty good marker of happiness.
Okay, the diet is seasonal. The diet varies according to the seasons, tying the whole community to the natural rhythm of the earth cycle, following the wild food harvest, provided the main structure of traditional life.
When we started telling people in the community about the results of the nutritional analysis, most people just did not care. It just did not really resonate with people. And what resonated with them much more was this idea of living according to the seasons and according to the natural rhythms and cycles of the earth. And that it kind of surprises and kind of didn't surprise us. Who the nutritional analysis really did resonate with were tribal members who were in the healthcare business and who were already studying diet, nutrition, and all those things that came naturally to them. But for most community members, this is what really appealed to them about the diet, was this seasonal connection. And we're just going to interrupt here for just a second, wait for Twyla, who was just called out, and she'll be right back with us.
While we're waiting, could you explain a little bit more of what's on the screen right now?
Yeah.
That hurts.
Yeah, the circle in the middle.
I'll explain later.
Okay. Okay, it was worth the wait. The circle in the middle, starting on the right, are the seasons in Apache. And the pictures starting from the upper right kind of correspond with the harvest schedule. And so it starts with the tubers in the spring and then just kind of works its way through the year. And so the seasonal cycle is the thing that really speaks to people far more than a nutritional analysis. And do you want to talk about this slide?
Okay, so you look at Chichil, and it's at Emery Oak Acorn. And I lost myself.
Oh, that's okay. No, so these two maps on the left, it shows where Emery Oak Acorn grows. And on the right is a map of Apache country. And it's basically the same map. And that's just how tied Apache people are to the gathering cycle. We think of Apaches as great warriors, which they were, but the backbone of their life and the scaffolding and structure of that traditional life was following these wild plant harvests.
And so with this acorn, you look at Emery Oak Acorn, it's just, there are one of many species of acorn that grow globally. But this is the only acorn in the entire globe that grows in that boundary. And if you do research on it, you will notice that Emery Oak Acorn is only in this area, nowhere else in the world.
And it's the only two species of acorns that you can just pick off the tree and eat without processing are
Or
Emery Oak.
leaching.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to leach. Okay. So before I began, I wanted to share a little bit about the project itself. So we're looking at these nice, beautiful onions. One of the onions that are growing up, it usually comes up in about a month or so, but they're already sprouting. And so this is the second species that's really beautiful. I can say, you can tell what it's called scientifically, but I will,
That's amazing.
uh-huh.
Yeah, so,
Go ahead, you can talk.
no, go ahead.
Oh, you can talk. I could just show the road where the camera is, and I don't know where it is, but it's a beautiful pearl onion. You can see, I don't know if you can see right here, but it's a very tiny onion. And it's a very flavorful. It tastes exactly like an onion. So I have to go maybe 10 miles from where I live to go collect these in the desert. And I get excited for this time because right now my radar is like, oh, we gotta go get onions. And we go get these onions. And the people I go gather, kill the animals here. The people I go gather with get excited too, because this is the time you can cook these stews with this onion. These onions are only, this specific onions is only gonna be here for a few weeks. When it sprouts, it goes away, I think about like 3 weeks, 2 weeks, then it's gone till next season. So what's beautiful about this is the flavor from the stems on the smaller one. Oh, they're so delicious. So when it comes to the season, I get excited. And it's also deer hunting season. So when we're preparation with the deer hide into creating the skin, the deer skin, it's not a one person thing, it's involvement with many people. So with the young people that I have participating in cleaning a deer hide or tanning a deer hide, it's not just hunting for the meat, it's also to collect the skin for the ceremonies, but also placing in an area where young people will go, okay, so I do a whole different process of doing this. So mine is doing it in the river, and I'll set it in the river for about a good 7 days. And you can absolutely clean a beautiful, beautiful hide without all the chemicals or waste or things that are going to be around. It actually does itself naturally. So each time is having someone say, oh, I went to the river to go check on that for you. The river is about half a mile from where I live. But knowing that someone's excited to go check on this at the river is exciting. They wake up and they have a sense of purpose. The same with this, for the people that collect this for me and help me collect or help gather. It's something different than going, oh, let's go to the store. Oh, the onions are up. Let's go get the onions. Let's go make this stew. So it engages people and their senses to the land and to the timing that you know, this natural cycle of Mother Earth. I just wanted to share that, so I have to run out and go get this really quick and share, because I collected these yesterday. And as you've seen in the clip, you've seen a little beautiful white throat desert wood rat. So we're gonna be cooking that Friday. We got probably like 10 of them. Yeah, probably like 10 of them. They're gonna be cooking with interested community members that have, some of them have experience in hunting and cooking them, and we're just teaching it to the next generation. So it's something where from before people would say, oh, that's only for poor people. Oh, we don't eat that no more. We have money. So money really transition or make people's mind different and accepting what was already out there in the natural world, like these food. Now you go to an organic store, man, these things are expensive. I went to an organic store and even get organic meat is expensive, but we have the ability to go hunt it, harvest it, prepare it and cook it. And same with these food, and bringing that knowledge back between what we're trying to teach, but also engaging people to go out and harvest these awesome food. I mean, there's like a lot of food out there, especially when it comes to berry season. I get so excited when it's berry season. I think everybody does. So going back to this slide, the traditional Apache relationship with food is deeply personal, respectful, and spiritual. The holy people, Nigotsan, food, plants, and animals, and attaining a state of Gojon are all interconnected. And how much time do I have? How much time do I have? Do I have a time for this?
We have about 10 minutes because,
Okay.
but I can also
Okay.
ask people if they could stay a little later, and then we have questions.
Okay, I'm going to do this really quick elevator speech. Okay, again, my name is Twyla Cassador. I'm not a citizen. I'm from Peridot. I live in Violus, Arizona, and I am a proud member of the St. Paris Apache tribe. I'm proud to say I am Apache. There was a time where I was lost with my life as a teenager, got lost to alcohol and drugs, and that stayed with me for more than 20 years. I'm a recovered addict, and it's been a very hard journey, very hard journey. And it was after several attempts of suicide and just not knowing my place in this world and not having that relationship with the land also. I always say that. A lot of it is asking why did I fall to drugs, bad relationship, doing the things I did that a person should not be doing or have to be doing and would not ever think of doing. When that happened, I had to really go back and think about myself. And it took me back to a time where before I was kindergarten, before I was 5, that we went through many babysitters. I have good parents. I have awesome parents. My mom's a teacher, my dad's an electrician. And they had to work. And we lived way out in the outskirts. We had a great place. We had farm, we had garden, we had horses, pigs, we had sheep, we had we ate what we grew, and we ate what we harvested, which is the animals that my dad hunted. So my dad and mom went through a lot of babysitters, and some babysitters aren't good. And the babysitter took me to the river about a quarter of a mile from where we live. Let's go to the river. Let's go to the river. Bad things happened to me at that river, and just remembering the smell of dirt, the trees. I remember everything, and it took me a long time to we're always taught you don't talk about this, nothing to us. That's what is common in my time. Today is a little bit different. I'm glad people talk about these things now. But I grew up in a time where you never talk about this, no matter what happened to you. This happened for some time as I was growing up, and it really messed up my life. And so I started embracing this negative life, negative world, embracing drugs especially, and getting lost. One day I had people, my relatives, take me out to go get materials for basket weaving and want me to help them. And they pretty much took me to the same place where this had happened. And it's a place I just never liked. So going there, I could smell the river, I could smell the dirt, I could smell, but in a whole different way. I was happy. I was around people that loved me. I was around people that I trusted and people that I could trust. And I just cried, you know. Something woke up while I was out there collecting these beautiful plants and start wanting to learn more about myself, my culture, who I am. Why wasn't I proud of who I am, you know, as an Apache person? Today, I think it's like super awesome, you know, and that's the same I want to instill in young people, knowing there's a way to deal with some of the trauma we are dealing with naturally without being chemically dependent on anything from the pharmaceutical. But there are some people that do need medication, that's true. But for some point, there is other ways of helping people heal through foraging, through harvesting, through connecting, and some of it is doing these hunts that we do. We have, I'm going to try to go really, really fast. So I go do this desert wood rat hunt, and I do it seasonally. And there was a time when a young girl would knock on my door early in the morning and tell me, hey, it's time to go bushel hunting. So we go to my best hunter. This girl could kill like 10 pack rat in one day with no problem. She'd be there like, it's like watching a soccer ball game. And she'd be there like, boom. And we had these two long sticks, look like pool sticks. And her aim was perfect. And she would always hit the head really perfect. We had no problem with it. This girl went through the same thing I went through. But because the way our judicial system is, she remained in the same home. And she never got therapy, never got help. But she learned to cope. She had unresolved anger. She see those lustre, and when she killed it, she released a lot of anger, hate, and she was just how you say, a professional archer almost, because she was dead on spot on killing these little beautiful animals, and she'd be seeing it, and she's like, oh, how cute, you know, we watch it run around and boom. And she felt good. She felt relieved. And today she's a student. She works. She has no kids. She's grown up. She's really happy. She's learned to cope with a lot of unresolved things that we don't have resource to reach some people based on their, a lot of it is our judicial system, yes. And a lot of it is going back to, we don't have nobody. We don't talk about it. And us as family, we know, but we don't talk about it too. But yet, how do we help people so they can manage these things? And a lot of it is going back to this. And this young girl, she knows all of this. And her friends know all of this. And today, every one of these young people that have really grew with me doing this, they're all in school. They all want something more with their life. They all know that they can go hunting and they can do these things, and it's like therapy. It's an amazing therapy just to be out there and be with the land and connect and pray and be outside. But to be able to manage a lot of these unresolved things that we deal with in life. I just want to share that. So thank you.
So real quick, I know we're kind of getting right up into the time. So we have a lot of projects to make sure that people in the community are getting this information so that they can have a real experience. So one of the things that Twyla is really working on is for the purposes of grants, we call it a year-round Apache language and cultural curriculum. But all it is going through that seasonal cycle where we have over 200 activities to do. A lot of it has to do with food harvesting and gathering, and teaching young people how to do it so that they can become teachers themselves for their own families. From the nutritional analysis, we also are doing a fitness analysis, and we have started working with a group of young tribal members in the healthcare industry who are interested in putting together a traditional Apache-based diet and fitness plan that will include menus, lots of field trips to show people these plant foods, and then collecting and making books and other information about natural world, the plants, animals, birds, and insects. We're starting to work on a food book, which will have some recipes, but real general knowledge of the food. Twyla works a lot with getting people traditional seeds so they can have their own gardens at home with no big inputs, just with what they have. We also have a traditional Apache parenting curriculum, which is being taught at our social services in the school district, and teaching a class at the tribal college on an introduction to traditional Apache healthcare. So we're busy. And what we try to do is just like what Twyla does, is make sure that most of our educational activities are outside, hands-on, according to the seasons. And that they really try to connect to the land through experience and their own traditional family and clan systems. And so tying people to where their clan is from is a real key thing. It's a central part of Apache identity. And this is Twyla at the place where her clan is from, up in the White Mountains. And the big thing is we don't like to think in terms of prevention or anything. We want to teach people real practical ancestral knowledge. So instead of teaching people about tobacco cessation, we want to teach people about traditional Apache tobacco culture. That's a wild tobacco on the left. And basically, it's a promotion of life instead of disease awareness. We just want to kind of outcompete the drugs, disease, all those things with something that is far more sustainable and meaningful. And that's Twyla's girls in action getting the pack rats. And that's a way better educational experience than probably what all of us experienced on the right. And that's basically it, is we really want to infuse the community with this ancestral knowledge. And thank you. Ellie, did we make it on time?
Yes, y'all did an amazing job and of time, but also just, I want to thank you so much for sharing the depth of living a real whole healthy life and the place that a traditional diet has. And thank you so much for the inspiration of being a happy human. I want to open it up now for some questions. I know we have one in the chat, so I will, we have so many people. I think I'll just go ahead and read it if you guys want to put a question in the chat, unless Seth or Twyla, y'all want to see, but I'll just read this first one from Mark Lambert Daniels. Do Apache folks eat the wild onion flowers as well?
Yes.
I've always enjoyed eating them when they come across the patch and bloom.
Yes, they're really good. They're really great in salad.
Okay, cool. Does anybody else have a question? You can also raise your hand if you want to do that, or if you want to put it in the chat. And I have 1,000 questions, but I'm going to wait and let other people ask.
There are 3 different ones.
And I do want to make sure that Seth and Twyla, y'all do look at the chat, because I'll just read some of these in the meantime.
I think you have to click in the chat.
Okay. Here's one. It's from Jim Allen. I'd be interested in any examples you have of active tending of wild food plants.
Excuse me, I'd be interested in any examples you have of any activities. What does it mean?
Okay, no, she was just asking a question. Is there any examples of? So for the most part, no, because like for instance, Apaches didn't do, they did very little prescribed fire because they didn't need to. And so the Apache approach is just all natural systems. Mm-hmm. So for the most part, very little, they wouldn't plant wild foods, except in a few instances. And we know that they would, in the wintertime, they might burn an area of an acre or less to encourage kind of like what we now consider weedy species. So they would be encouraging some grasses, wild mustards, and like some of the wild spinaches, amaranthus and chenopodium, lamb's quarters, things like that, but in real small patches. And most people didn't do that. And when people did it, they did it pretty rarely.
Okay, cool. Here's another one. This is from Hayden George. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing. I'm a terrible speller. What is your favorite dish for the traditional diet during the winter season?
For myself, acorn. I mean, I love acorn stew and deer meat.
So you don't need to do anything to those acorns?
No, you just collect them, set them out, for a couple days, process them. And you don't have to leach them. That's the amazing thing about Emery Oak Acorn.
That's amazing. Okay, we got one more here. Are you from Anita Joy? I don't know how to pronounce your last name either. Are you seeing climate change affecting the timing of plants coming up or their abundances?
That's why they're coming up. They shouldn't be coming up for another month or two, but they're already sprouting, and you got some things doing bizarre, like the chia's out. I'm like, this is not a normal season for chia, but they're coming up. And same with the New Mexico thistles. I've seen those coming up, and normally they're not up for like 2-3 months, but people in the city don't see it because they're in these buildings and they're in the cities and where they don't get to see the land. But when you're outside, you see the behavior of animals, you get to see the changes in the plant cycles. And they're adapting just to whatever Mother is going through. The animal and the plants are just adapting.
So really for the past 3 years is when we've seen the big changes. And they're big changes. So for the most part, there have not been wolfberry. The lower elevation desert wolfberries have not been producing berries. And that's just one example, but it throws all of the insects and the birds off too. And yeah, it's like this domino effect. And there's lots and lots of individual plants that have really been affected that we're seeing a change. And then it seems like the past 3 falls, there's been like a fake spring in November. And then some of those that are coming up in November are things that usually will start coming up in March. But now they're not coming up at all because they came up in November, but not much. And so it really has thrown everything off.
Okay, we have time for one more question. This is from Jack Farrell. How can your information be incorporated into tribal education systems?
Yeah, that's a real challenge. So we work at the forestry, our tribal forestry department, and they let us and encourage us to do this work because they use the information for making real management decisions. And that's good. But it's actually a challenge to get this into educational institutions. It's a real challenge. It's hard to, once you put it into the format that schools are used to and want, then it sucks all the meaning out of it and the experience out of it. So it's a real challenging thing to do. And we're trying to deal with it. It looks like maybe the best place to teach the information is not in those institutions.
Okay, we have one more. I do want to announce to everyone to please look in the chat that you are all invited to the post-seminar discussion. We have the link up there and the password. We will take a 5-minute break so our speakers can drink some water or stretch or move around before we begin that. But I think this is a nice question to end with. How do you plan to distribute the menus you create?
I give it to him.
Well, we don't know. That's why we're giving it to each other. I think Twyla can maybe explain, she just the way she naturally operates seems like that's the best way to do it. Maybe you could just explain how you share information.
Yeah, it's just it's not structured. I can honestly say it's not a structured format. It's like, oh, the onions are, let's go, and we go. So there are other people that are interested will say, oh, I want to go, and so yeah, let's go. And so it's like, oh, but I have to work. I said, well, I'll wait till you get off work and we'll go after work, and we try to beat the sunlight and things, but we'll get to go out there. And that I would say we're on Mother Earth's time, and it's not our time, and she's not there for our convenience, you know. So if you miss a season, you miss a season till next year. And I try to make every effort to, and I have people that do follow me to go as much as they can to learn about foraging. But not only that, they get to teach their families, and I'll always get a great amount of good, how you say, a feedback with their family's experience of cooking and harvesting and preparing some of these foods. Some of the food they do know, some of the food is introduced and they learn to cook in a different, beautiful way. And very, very happy to incorporate that way of putting this with other food. And I don't know, it just tastes a lot better, especially these little tiny ones are like the best ones. I'm serious. You ever get a chance to try these, try them. You will never go back to going to a Whole Food or any other stores for these. You're going to want to go and dig, and you have to go out there. It takes a little bit of work, you know, go clean them and process them, but you only need probably like 5 of these. And what would take a whole onion, you can only use 5 of these. They're perfect. I love these.
Okay, we're gonna have to call it so that you guys can take a break, but I do want to encourage everyone again, if you have some more questions, to join us for the discussion. And I want to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for sharing y'all's heart, your knowledge, and helping people understand what it means to be whole and happy. And thank you, thank you, thank you. So everybody, whoever would like to join us, we will see you again. But before Twyla and Seth, y'all get off, please be sure to read the chat. There's a lot of heartfelt thanks being shared with y'all. So everybody else, thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you.